NATO sending by emphasizing its readiness to use all necessary tools in response?
I will characterize this in terms that the Indian audience in particular will understand at once. I was listening to an Indian commentator speaking about relations
that are, more show than anything else. I must say that after the steps taken by the president, we will have to rebuild the trust between the president and my government, because when a friend does not take into consideration your needs, your very basic defense needs, and only makes statements about it, but does not really take into consideration, that makes you think about what is really the basic of this friendship. And I'm guessing that my government will have to think about that future relationship.
Now for this discussion, we are joined by Dan Perry. He's a world affairs analyst, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Dan, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, how might France's recognition of Palestine impact its diplomatic relations within the Middle East, especially with Israel?
Well, it clearly creates tension between France and the government of Israel. Obviously, the recognition on the ground has basically no effect because it changes nothing of the reality between Israelis and Palestinians. If France and other European countries, however, choose to punish Israel for not going along with this, they do have some leverage because Israel's GDP, a third of it comes from exports, and Israel's largest trading partner is Europe. So if they kick Israel out of its associate membership of the European Union, if they start imposing customs, if they shut down the technological R&D cooperation and access to funds that Israel has, all of this could impact Israel. But the real issue, the fundamental question, is whether those who say that this will end up strengthening Hamas are right. The idea is that even people who want a two-state solution, and that may not include the current Israeli government, but it may well include most Israeli people, whether they're right in fearing that a two-state solution is made less likely, not more likely, by this recognition because it strengthens Hamas. Absolute precondition for Israel taking the risks that it would need to take in order to enable an independent Palestine to arise, specifically a military pullout from most of the West Bank. A condition of that is that Hamas is no longer a factor in Palestinian political life, and certainly it doesn't have a military force that could end up taking over the West Bank the way they took over Gaza and then threaten Israel very, very significantly. Remember that the West Bank surrounds Jerusalem on three sides and is a strategic highland overlooking the entire center of Israel. They can't take that risk if Hamas is around. And the tragedy is that Hamas is currently using this recognition by European powers, not just France, but maybe even more significantly Britain, the former colonial power in Palestine, to claim validation for their strategy of having invaded Israel, massacred in the most barbaric conceivable savagery over 1,000 people, and sparked a war that brought disaster upon Gazans. So this suddenly looks like maybe a logical way to comport oneself if the result is that the long-awaited recognition of Palestine by major European powers comes about. And Hamas, of course, is claiming such validation. And if the result is Hamas being strengthened among Palestinians, then Palestine will be less likely, not more likely, as a consequence.
And Dan, since you've mentioned UK and how they were the colonial power back then, do you think UK has any responsibility towards making a peaceful solution in Israel and Palestine now?
I mean, it's subjective whether a former colonial power has responsibility. I think the UK's main responsibility is to make peace within the UK, which last I checked is in the throes of a lot of local agitation over relationships with migrant communities and many other problems that are in part self-imposed. I think the UK means well. I think Starmer genuinely is a friend of Israel and wants to do right by the Palestinians also. Whether he's driven by the manifest destiny of a former Britannia ruling the seas, I cannot say. I actually don't think they have a responsibility because of that. I think they have the same responsibility as any other power that is, perhaps the number six economy in the world and wants to use that leverage and that wherewithal for good and not for bad. The UK too stands accused potentially of helping Hamas, which is pretty much the last thing you want to do if your goal